Welcome to Theory of Pets. Thanks for tuning in. Today I am covering a topic that I have gotten tons of questions about, and that is how to satisfy a picky eater. This is something that cat owners, dog owners, pet owners everywhere have a problem with this. Thankfully, I don't. We have a chocolate Labrador, and in true Labrador fashion, she will eat anything at all. We have a Beagle who is a little bit picky about her treats, but she's not really particular about her kibble as long as it's a high quality dog food. She won't eat poor quality dog food, but I think that's because we've always fed a higher quality diet. So the protein is always the number one ingredient. It's more odoriferous, it's more appetizing, smells better, attracts their attention. So I think that's why she won't eat the lower quality stuff. But we don't have to worry about that with our dogs. I know a lot of pet parents do. So today I enlisted the help of an expert in this field of pet nutrition, Dr. Jennifer Adolphe, who I've spoken with before. She is the senior nutritionist for Petcurean. Petcurean is a premium brand of pet food. As a registered dietitian, Jennifer began her career in human nutrition, but in 2009, she decided to combine her interest in nutrition with her love of animals, and so she got a PhD in pet nutrition. She has been on my show before to answer some pet nutrition questions for us. So today I asked her about satisfying picky eaters and to share any tips that she might have on the topic. So this week we're going to be talking about satisfying picky eaters. So what are some reasons that a dog may be a picky eater?
There's lots of reasons why a dog may be a picky eater, and this is a very timely topic because I actually just attended a presentation last week by a scientist who examines the feeding behaviors of dogs and what maybe affects their pickiness to eat. So there's definitely differences in dog traits. If you think about a Great Dane versus a Chihuahua, their size, their shape, their metabolic rate, their lifestyle can be hugely different and can affect their degree of pickiness. Even things like the shape of the skull can affect their sense of smell and their chewing, and that can all impact their pickiness. So these researchers were interested in how dog personality might influence their owner's perception of whether or not their dog enjoys their food, and how might differences in dog feeding style may influence these perceptions. So they kind of classified the dogs into different behaviors. So they have the insatiable personality, so those breeds that are more likely to gobble up their food and not stop. Think of your typical Labrador Retriever who just wants to chow down on anything. Then there's dogs that are more of a food guarding personality, so they may have some aggression if you try to take their food away. And then there's dogs that will eat absolutely anything, from the grossest thing in your backyard to your sock, who knows what, right?
Right.
So they were interested in these different personalities, and they really found that small breed dogs tend to be viewed as more picky. They measured what they called the nose in the bowl behavior. So if their nose is really in the bowl and they have little distraction while they eat, they're very focused on their food, then their owners perceive them as really liking the food. And so it really does seem to be breed differences and even down to breed size that it can affect the pickiness of the dog.
That's interesting because we quite often think about, smaller dogs being more picky, but a lot of people say, smaller dogs are more spoiled, so they just are pickier eaters. So that's quite interesting that it's actually could be caused by quite a long list of things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that sometimes also our dogs train us to get what they want to eat. And so if they resist eating something and we try to find something that they will eat, then they may start to hold out for that food that they really want. And so it's being aware of that and knowing that you may need to wait a little bit. And that pickiness is not necessarily a bad thing with the obesity epidemic in the pet population these days. A little bit of pickiness may kind of help stave off gaining those extra pounds.
Absolutely. So let's say that somebody has a dog, for example, we have a Labrador Retriever who, like you mentioned, will eat anything. It doesn't matter what type of food. She's always excited just for mealtime. So if you have a dog that's typically like that and always eats their meals and now they're suddenly have become picky, should you seek the advice of a veterinarian? Should you maybe just try and change their diet? What advice would you give for pet parents dealing with that issue?
So if a dog is typically very enthusiastic and all of a sudden becomes picky, behavior change is often an indicator of a comorbidity in a pet. So you may want to seek the advice of your veterinarian sooner or later. If they really don't have any other symptoms, they're still drinking water, and there's no diarrhea or vomiting or anything like that, maybe they have just kind of become bored of their food. But it never hurts to bring this up with your vet just to make sure there's nothing else going wrong. Anything from a sore tooth to pain somewhere could be the cause of the dog suddenly not eating. If there's any weight loss, that can also be an indicator that you should visit your vet. So if your dog does change its behavior, instead of you yourself just kind of being like, oh, my dog's just being stubborn and not wanting to eat, it's definitely a good idea to consult your veterinarian.
And are there dangers to dogs being a picky eater? Like even if it's not sudden, but they just kind of have been picky their whole lives?
There aren't really dangers to being a picky eater as long as the dog is eating enough to maintain a healthy body weight. And a lot of people actually overestimate how much food their dog actually needs, and that can contribute to obesity. So it's good to have a conversation with your veterinarian to determine if your dog is at a healthy body weight and to discuss your dog's eating behaviors to make sure that your dog is not being over or undernourished.
If you are struggling with a picky eater, let's say you've already talked to your veterinarian, there's no health issues or anything like that, what are some tips that you have for pet owners to help their dogs who are picky eaters?
So there are a number of things you can try. Some dogs just have very different taste preferences. So for our own brands at Petcurean, we have different kind of brand philosophies with different flavors. So our Now Fresh line only contains fresh ingredients, and versus our Go line, which has different products within that, different flavors, different meat proteins. So you may want to try just a different flavor of food. If that doesn't work, then there are wet foods that you can use that are often a little bit more enticing for some pets. And so we recently introduced our line of Now Fresh Tetra products, which are wet foods. They're in a Tetra Pak instead of a can, which has benefits from a sustainability perspective, from an ease of use perspective, and you can either feed these foods kind of on rotation with your dog's other diet. If they're on a dry food, you could mix the wet food with the kibble in order to entice the dog to eat. I recently discovered that my own dog is a little bit picky. I had a household of 3 dogs, and unfortunately 2 of them passed away in a relatively short period of time, and I discovered that my youngest dog, without a little bit of competition, was now a picky eater. And so I started mixing his kibble with just a little bit of wet food, and it's amazing how it now entices him to eat.
Absolutely. We actually found that our boxer that we had years ago, she was a very picky eater, and sometimes just getting something that's a little bit more odorous and, they can smell those, especially if you're using fresh, like meat, fresh food ingredients, that can be really helpful to get pets to eat.
Yeah, for sure. Even doing something as simple as adding a bit of water to the kibble can help the pet to entice them to eat, or warming up the food a little bit to make it a little bit, add a bit more smell to the food so that it entices them to eat. And again, your pet doesn't necessarily have to eat on an exact schedule. If they are a bit of a picky eater, maybe they're really just not hungry. And so again, it's finding that balance.
And do you ever recommend adding human food of any kind, such as broth or protein sources, to your dog's food to get them to eat?
A low sodium chicken broth or vegetable broth or something like that may work well. The nice benefit of a broth is that it also adds some moisture to the food, so I don't see any issues with that. Adding some fresh foods is also an option. Again, the key is to make sure that you're not replacing too much of your pet's usual food, which is complete nutrition, and that you're not creating kind of a nutritional imbalance by adding too much of an extra food, and also to be cognizant of the extra calories that are being added as well to prevent weight gain.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, the weight gain is something that a lot of pet parents need to be conscious of.
Yes, for sure. It's one thing that we do have a lot of control over for our pets, and keeping our pets at a healthy weight is one of the best things that we can do for their long-term health.
And do you have any other tips to share for pet parents with picky eaters?
Really just to be patient, try different things, and to keep your pet on a schedule so that they learn that they are fed at certain times of the day. You can offer their food for a set amount of time. If they don't eat it, take it away and then offer it again at their next meal time. The other thing that might help to resolve the pickiness is to make sure that your dog is getting enough exercise, and that they're working up an appetite, and that they are actually hungry and want to eat.
Absolutely, that's a good point. I don't think a lot of pet parents think about when they have a picky eater is, maybe the dog just isn't hungry.
Yeah, exactly. Dogs are programmed to eat and not to starve themselves, and so some dogs just have more of an innate restriction on how much they eat, and if they're not hungry, that's actually an okay thing. It's good to have that internal signals in the dog to not eat if they really aren't hungry.
For sure. Thank you again so much for your time today. I appreciate it. And I hope everybody out there got as much out of this interview as I did today. Another big thank you to Dr. Adolphe for coming on and speaking with us. If you guys have any questions about canine nutrition or how to get your picky eater to eat on a regular basis, feel free to send me an email. I will try and answer it for you. If I can't, I will be sure to send it on to Dr. Adolphe to see if we can get it answered for you. While you're on our website, which is theoryofpets.com, if you could take just a minute to give us a review, that would be great. When you guys review the podcast, it helps me when I'm reaching out to experts like Dr. Adolphe, where I can show her that you guys are out there, you're listening, you're interested in these topics. So it just takes a couple of minutes, and I would really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will be back with another hot topic very soon.